Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to this week's edition of the Garage Workshop and the second video in my series on my epic clamp storage build. Roll the intro. Okay, so in this part of the video I'm hopefully going to finish off my clamp storage. If you haven't seen the first part of the video, I'd originally set out to make a clamp storage system for the space I've got in my garage, about the only bit of wall I've got left in the garage workshop. I took down my drilling station and I decided to design and make a sort of bookcase style clamp storage to go there, which is here. That's all in the first video. Here's the link for it in case you haven't seen it. Now, just as I was approaching finishing it, Jason Hibbs at the Bournemouth workshop dropped a video where he's essentially done exactly the same thing as me. His is obviously much bigger and obviously a lot better made, but it is essentially the same project as me, which is bizarre that it's a coincidence we happen to drop them at the same time. So, having watched his video, I've watched it about 6 times now, I would like to incorporate some of the ideas he put in his video into mine. So instead of having one unit, which I've already put it up against the wall, fits no problem, I've secured it once, I've just brought it down again to make the second one. I'm going to make a second unit pretty much identical to the first one and then put the two of them together. So I've got a fold out, like a book fold out shape. Apologies by the way if you can hear the chickens and the Ring doorbell. So I'm going to put them together. Now originally I had planned to save the piece of wood I've got a piece of this timber, this soft plywood left, which was going to be the sort of front door that went on the front of this. And I think I said in the last video that the door was going to be the back of this unit, but this morning I weighed that piece of wood, which in itself was quite a task, and it weighs, believe it or not, getting on for 9 kilograms. 9 kilograms I think is too much weight for this, for the fixing on the wall. Now, although it's going to be secured to the bottom of the floor, this first unit, and open from there, I think that's too much. When you bear in mind the considerable weight in the clamps as well, I think that's far too much. So I am going to copy Jason's technique. I've got this caster. I bought a couple of these casters in B&Q, 2 of them a while ago. These are heavy duty casters. Each caster can support up to 70 kilograms in weight. So I'm going to use this and attach it to the bottom, and it will be hidden exactly the same way as it is on Jason's, which I thought was a really good idea because A, it's going to support the weight of this unit, and B, obviously it's going to make it a lot easier to undo and do. Now I'm going to secure this exactly in the middle, so obviously underneath, but there, if you can see what I mean, and that's going to give me a lot of support. So rather than putting that hulking great big piece of wood in, I've got 2 options. I've got some MDF bits that I've got lying around like this. As you can see, they're not brilliant, they've got a couple of scratches and things in them. I can either put these on there and use it as the back, or it will be that way, and do exactly as I did with the front, putting in the sticking out sort of wood like the shelves to put the clamps in, or I can cut up that piece of wood and use it for different bits. Now I haven't quite decided which one to do yet. I'm just weighing up the pros and cons. The thing about doing this is potentially you're going to see it when you, because obviously this is now going to be an open face unit, and you're going to see a mixture of plywood and a mixture of MDF, which I don't think is going to look great. But having said that, if I complete this the way that I think potentially I can complete it, it might be that I've got some storage for my extra long clamps down the side. So I'm still weighing up in my mind the design process, but I've already attached this bit. I just put a little test fit, a little dry test fit to start measuring out. So the first thing I'm going to do is accurately measure the space for the clamps. I'm going to break out the table saw with my router on it so that I can do the inserts exactly as I did in the first video. So let's get it together, see what it looks like, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to work. Let's get going. So the first thing I did was get the scrap pieces of 18mm ply and MDF that I had lying around and got them cut down to the right size, which did involve first of all taking off the edge, because these were scraps, so they were sort of separate bits. So first of all I got straight edge using the table saw, and then that allowed me to cut down to the final shape. And as you can see, all the way through both of these videos, I've been really careful with my measurements, and here there was just a slight ridge which I just sort of flattened out with a table saw. So I did measure probably more than you've ever seen me measure before, and actually more than I think I have measured before. Just one other thing, I did mention it in the previous video, but I changed my table saw blade for a Saxon blade. I'll put the link in the description. I'm not providing, you know, an analysis for Saxon, but it is pretty good and well worth doing. I then went on to do the pocket holes. I'm not sure if any of you also listen to the Woodwork Banter podcast that Matt from Badger Workshop and Keith do from Rag and Bone Brown, but in this week's one, when they talk about unpopular opinions, they talk about pocket holes and their opinion of them, and it's the first time I've actually listened to it and not agreed with what they've said. I think pocket holes definitely have a place, but for me, I don't think there's anything wrong with using pocket holes, particularly if it's not going to be seen, which they did sort of say. But lots of pocket holes in this video, as you will have already seen from the previous two videos. The next step was to put in the groove that the sort of, I don't really know how to describe this, a sort of shelf of the support was going to go in. This is where I'm going to put the sort of shelf, and there I am cutting it, and this is what the clamps are actually going to attach to. Now that I've got my router table up and running, I'm using it a lot more often, and I'm actually finding it that my sort of homemade Heath Robinson style attachment for my table saw is working quite well. So after I'd done that, it's a really good fit, as you can see, slightly short either way, but that didn't worry me. So when I got the shelves done, I then just started the process of putting in all the pocket hole screws. And again, as I mentioned in the first video, for this build, I'm actually using the proper pocket hole screws. They're a lot better. They've sort of got a hex end on them, but they are a lot better and a lot sturdier. But I do know I need to buy more because I've only got them in one length, and that's not good enough for every job I do. So after I'd got that one shelf in, the sort of top bracketed shelf, I just went ahead then and put them all in. I slightly moved it, this one, because I didn't want the scrap of wood to be tight, because I used a scrap for that sort of shelf ledge. I used a scrap that was a little bit bigger than 18. It said it was 18, but it was actually a little bit too tight, so I just gave it a little wobble out, if you see what I mean. Here I'm just attaching that shelf. Again, with all of the things on this build, I pre-drilled absolutely everything, particularly with MDF. I find it splits really easily, so I'm just really cautious. So I pre-drilled and pre-screwed everything. I'm actually making the shelf here. It looks a bit odd. I just used the other shelf as a sort of guide. That's not where it's going. I just used it to keep everything straight. And as you can probably see, there was a tiny little split in the MDF there, despite the fact I had pre-drilled everything. So then I got it on. It looks like it's out of sort of sync here because the other side is underneath it, but got it on and attached it. Didn't have any issues. I then continued to make the other shelf. The reason why I put this clip in rather than making you mundanely sit through everything was, even though I've got my table there, I didn't actually have it connected. My table, so my router table, is producing a lot more dust, so I need to think about that. So if any of you got any good idea in the comments about a way that I can do that, even when I've got the hose actually attached to the router underneath, it's not taking that dust away. So I just locked everything together again with the pocket holes, and then I very gingerly lifted it upside down and offered it up to the piece of wood underneath, and I was really pleased that it actually fit in the first instance and didn't look badly out. It was a little bit out at the bottom due to the sort of slight unevenness of the shelves, but I wasn't worried about that too much because I knew that I could sort of buckle it straight when I fixed it down, which is exactly what happened. But I really took my time here. What you can't sort of see is not a very good camera angle there. That's just me fixing the pocket holes that are on the inside before I fix the pocket holes that are on the outside. Which is what I'm doing there. And then I drilled and screwed in that screw on the end just to help brace that very top bit. So the next stage was to attach the caster, which was way more difficult than I anticipated. But I got it on in the end. And then I offered the hinges up. I just packed out the hinges with a bit of cardboard. It's hard to see in the video, just to give it literally a gap of about 1-2 mil. Just so when I put the hinges on either side, there was room for the wood to move. So I just literally ran them all the way up and down the spine, pre-drilled and secured all of the holes. And they actually came out really well, and they're very, very sturdy hinges, which I was really pleased about, but I don't think they're going to go anywhere. Okay, so the unit is built. As you've seen, I've just connected it with the hinges. I'm hoping the 5 hinges are going to be enough, but I've just lifted the end of the unit up to wiggle it around, and it is really, really heavy. So I'm hoping the hinges are enough, and I'm hoping that the unit's not too heavy itself. So time to test it and see if I can pick it up. As you can see from this clip, it wasn't really the weight that was the issue here where I thought it was, because once I got it on the bottom and got that caster engaged, it was fine. It was more the sort of unwieldiness of the unit. It's quite an awkward piece to sort of carry on your own, but as you can see here, once I got the caster on the ground, it wasn't as much of an issue, and I was able to offer it up to the wall much easier than I thought I was going to. Okay, so it's not too heavy, which is good. It is leaning forward. I think I need a little shim at the back there, because as I said at the beginning, the floor's not very even, but it looks to me to be alright. I need to see if it opens, but obviously because of the way it's attached to the floor, it might not open, and I've got a funny feeling as well that it might just bash into the garage door there, which would be a bit of a disaster. Now I've got the clearance. Okay, it does open, but it's going to need to come off the floor a tiny little bit, because the other side is touching the floor. So let's shim that up and see if we can get it to open. Which thankfully it did. So now the unit was together and it was finished, I decided to incorporate my big clamps. So I put them in, got them as close as was comfortably possible, and then marked them using a pencil. And then I got out my Ryobi hand router just to route in the grooves. Now 2 of these were really easy, you'll see in a second. 2 of them were really, really easy to route in, because all I literally did was get the router, put it up against my guide, and it was nice and straight. But the one there that was closest to the join that you could see was actually really, really difficult, and I haven't got it on camera because unfortunately the GoPro cut out and I hadn't noticed. I sort of had to do it on an angle, and then I sort of hand cleared it up, which took quite a lot of time and was really, really tricky. But as you can see on this bit, the rest were really straightforward, but that one on the nearest side was difficult to do. But it worked a treat, and as you can see, the clamps fit in and they're very flush. Although the handle sticks out, that goes into a gap on the marrying sort of wall, as you can see. Okay, so the project is finished. I did have a bit of a tussle getting it on the wall, I'm not going to lie, but it's nice and firmly secured there now, and I'm really happy with how it looks. I did put these little blanks on off camera. You can see the sort of back and the screw holes, and I thought I could live with them, but to be honest, I really couldn't. And I've also found out that I've got a little bit of sort of storage space here, or potentially I could hang things on here. But overall, really pleased with how it looks. Now, it does catch opening the garage door, which I'm going to fix that by just raising the garage door. It's only a couple of mil, but as you can see, it just rubs on its way out. But all of my clamps are in there now, and it's absolutely perfect for the amount of storage I've got. I've even, and I didn't plan it, I've even got exactly the right size shelf to put my little mini clamps on that are in that plastic pot. But everything's there. It is really sturdy. It's not going anywhere at all, and I'm really impressed with it. It's exactly how I wanted it to be. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to give it like a 9 out of 10. Really, really pleased. The only thing I've got to do, I bought a clasp to keep it together, but I bought one that needs to be attached on the inside, so I think I probably need either a strong magnetic one or perhaps even just some sort of latch which I'm going to get, and I've still got to treat it and fill the holes. But overall, I'm super impressed. It's probably, I would say, the best thing that I've built so far, so fingers crossed it stays that way. Apologies if you can hear music over my shoulder, by the way, there's a local fete going on. So if this is the second video that you've sat through, if you sat through the first and this one, thank you so much. If you're new to the channel, please can I ask you to go and look at all my other videos. I've got quite a few videos on there now. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment. If you're a regular viewer, I hope you enjoyed this video, something slightly different and a lot more of a project than I normally do. So thank you so much for your continued support. Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment. I'll see you on next week's edition of the Garage Workshop. Happy woodworking, everyone.